West Africa Democracy Radio.
94.9
94.9 FM Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and welcome to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Côte d'Ivoire Opposition Alliance defies government ban and insists on protesting against Ouattara's 4-term bid.
At this point, the combined efforts of the opposition represent a strong force that could have a real impact if they truly decide to mobilize.
It's not the marches themselves that threaten the campaign, but rather the possible excesses and unrest that might arise from them.
Mali imposes a visa ban on Americans in a reciprocal move after a similar policy by the U.S. State Department on Malian travelers. Guinea's judiciary system launches investigation into a deadly confrontation at a mining site, and the Liberian police face public backlash over fatal shooting of a mentally ill man.
He was a victim, he was never a suspect because he was a quiet young man. If that man had used this machete on any one of your officers, they would have been amputated by now. You can go open fire on armed men and say he will not hurt no policeman or mental ill person. Once you bring violence to them, they feel unsafe with you. Don't you know that, Mr. Aji?
Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Abdullahi Hassan with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and warm welcome to our listeners in Gambia, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone and Nigeria. The midday edition of Newslink takes off in Côte d'Ivoire, where the PPACI and PDCI Opposition Alliance has called on its supporters to continue street demonstrations. These protests are in opposition to President Alassane Ouattara's 4-term candidacy taking place in the midst of the election campaign. According to figures released by the Ivorian Ministry of the Interior, more than 230 demonstrators were arrested on Saturday during the opposition march. Augustine Coley has the rest of the details.
The Ivorian political landscape was particularly charged during the weekend. Between campaign activities and opposition protests, the streets of the capital were lively. Despite political intervention, the joint PDCR-PPACR front remains determined and insists on continuing its demonstrations. According to Ivorian political analyst Serge Patrick de Souza, this attitude could disrupt the smooth conduct of the electoral campaign.
At this point, the combined efforts of the opposition represent a strong force that could have a real impact if they truly decide to mobilize. We've already seen scattered demonstrations across the country and the effect they've had. This could potentially disrupt the ongoing electoral process. However, there is still time to ease tensions and bring everyone to the table for dialogue, because ultimately, what matters most is the national interest of Côte d'Ivoire.
In contrast, political analyst Jabiga Soro believes these demonstrations will not affect the momentum of the ruling government. He says they will have no significant impact on the ongoing electoral process.
It's not the marches themselves that threaten the campaign, but rather the possible excesses and unrest that might arise from them. Beyond that, it's a matter of the opposition's front strategy. Whether or not they choose to participate in the vote is their decision. Meanwhile, another faction of the opposition remains actively involved in the campaign. The ruling party continues its activities, and the Electoral Commission is carrying out its mandate as planned.
Tension remains high in the context of the election campaign. While the PDCR-PPACR front maintains its protests, Ivorian authorities are warning demonstrators against violence and disturbances to public order.
Augustine Coley, that report filed in by WADR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston Blay. More on election matters. Vote counting is still ongoing in Cameroon following Sunday's presidential election, which drew more than 8 million voters. The Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanga Inji, said the election largely passed off peacefully without any major incident across all 360 municipalities. Atanga Inji warned candidates against declaring results outside the legal framework but gave no turnout figures. Some irregularities were reported by observers, particularly in Douala, where voters struggled to locate polling stations. Local media also reported clashes in Garwa, near the home of candidate Issa Chiroma Bakari, between security forces and opposition supporters. 12 candidates, including incumbent Paul Biya, who seeks an 8th term, contested the poll. The Constitutional Council has until October 26 to announce the final results. Cameroonian journalist Solomon Agborem joins us in the second half of the news.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Remember, we stream live on wadr.org and on YouTube and Facebook, WADR News. Let's take you to the Sahel region, precisely in Mali, where a senior figure of the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, IS, has been neutralized by the unified forces of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, in Menaka, in the north of the country. The individual killed was Boubacar Demogui, one of the main commanders of the terrorist group. He was reportedly involved in several cases of kidnappings and assassinations in the region. Several of his collaborators were also eliminated during the operation.
According to Malian security sources, the operation was carried out last Wednesday by the armed forces of the AES. Using drones, the unified force targeted a coordination meeting of ISSGS in Menanka, northern Mali. During the operation, Boubacar Demongi, also known as Demongi Ag Almouna, was neutralized. A native of the Menanka region, Demongi was considered the right-hand man of Issa Bari, the emir of the Islamic State in the Sahel. He has been cited in several UN reports for his involvement in kidnappings and assassination, including the killing of Sidi Baka, president of Menanka Civil Society. His name is also linked to several major attacks, notably those in Indelimen in 2019 and Tongo Tongo in Niger in 2017. Other ISSGS figures, including Ishmael Old Habib Old Shogib and Ahmed Old Awen Old Shogib, were also killed, according to the army statement. This operation comes as AES forces have for several months intensified a series of offensives against the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, a group active in the three-border region between Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. In July, Suleiman Ag Bakawa, known as Soldat, another senior ISSGS member, was killed in a precision strike in Tinfadimata, also in northern Mali.
A report by WADR's Bamako correspondent Aliyu Cham, presented by Christopher Aticho. Still in Mali, authorities have tightened the conditions for obtaining certain types of visas for Americans wishing to travel to the Sahelan country. The measure, announced over the weekend, comes in response to Washington's decision to require a financial bond from Malian visa applicants. Bamako has condemned the U.S. decision as unilateral and is applying the principle of reciprocity. Crossing over to Guinea, authorities have launched an investigation following a deadly protest at a mining site in Nyagusola, located in the northeast region. The incident occurred in early October and has led to several dozen people being charged. Francis Boniface tells us more.
The event took place on October 4 in Nyagusola, northeastern Guinea, specifically at the site of the mining company, Whaling Mining. A protest against the company's gold extraction operations in the area turned tragic. The provisional toll stands at 2 dead and several injured. In terms of property damage, 14 vehicles, including one belonging to the gendarmerie, were set on fire, and several items were looted. In a statement, the Sigiri prosecutor's office announced that 60 people have been charged with alleged arson, theft, and murder. The prosecutor further explained that the protest was organized to demand the withdrawal of summons issued to 20 people and the release of 17 others arrested on September 24. Those individuals are under investigation for, quote, vandalism, theft, and destruction of property at the same site, end of quote. The gold mining town of Sigiri, located in northeastern Guinea, has been facing increasing tensions. The region is also struggling with widespread illegal gold mining. In July, the Guinean government banned all forms of artisanal, traditional, or mechanized gold mining across the country, a measure aimed at addressing the environmental degradation observed in the Sigiri area.
Francis Boniface reporting. In neighboring Liberia, the National Police has come under public scrutiny following the death of Matthew Moba, a Liberian citizen believed to have been suffering from mental illness. The incident, which took place in Congo Town, Monrovia, has generated widespread condemnation with accusations of excessive use of force and the lack of appropriate de-escalation tactics leveled against the police. From Monrovia, Abraham Parker reports.
According to Inspector General of Police Greco Coleman, the incident began when officers responded to a call reporting a police officer had been stabbed. Coleman stated that upon arrival, officers encountered Moba allegedly armed with a cutlass and a concealed knife. The police claimed Moba ignored repeated verbal commands and subsequently stabbed two officers, leading a third officer to discharge their weapon, resulting in Moluba's death.
The suspect and the injured officers were all rushed to the JFK Medical Center, where one officer remains in critical condition, and following the emergency treatment, the suspect was pronounced dead.
However, this account has been strongly challenged. Beauty Bronskin, a family link, has publicly refuted the police declaration of Moluba as a suspect, asserting that he was not involved in any criminal activity.
He was a victim. He was never a suspect because he was a quiet young man. If that man had used this machete on any one of your officers, they would have been amputated by now. You can't go open fire on armed men and say he will not hurt no policeman or mental ill person. Once you bring violence to them, they feel unsafe with you. Don't you know that, Mr. Aji?
A civil society group, the Solidarity of Trust for a New Day Stand, is demanding the immediate dismissal and prosecution of police IG Greco Coleman and the officers responsible. The death of Matthew Moba has become a focal point for broader systemic issues in Liberia, including police accountability, the application of force, and the treatment of individuals with mental health conditions. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Let's now turn our attention to Ghana, where the Maritime Authority GMA has confirmed a boat accident on the Volta Lake near Kiti, Karachi in the Oti region. At least 15 lives were lost, including 11 children. The incident occurred on Saturday, October 11, when an overloaded passenger boat capsized while returning from a funeral. An investigative team made up of maritime safety inspectors and personnel from the Navy Task Force in Dembai has been dispatched to determine the exact cause of the accident and identify any safety violations. From Accra, Nadri Tete reports.
The Ghana Maritime Authority says preliminary findings indicate that the boat was severely overloaded beyond its safe capacity, leading to the deadly accident. Of the 15 victims, 11 were children, aged between 2 and 14 years, 5 boys and 6 girls, while the remaining 4 were adults, comprising 3 women and 1 man. 4 others survived. The tragedy occurred around 1:30 p.m. as the boat carrying passengers from Okuma to Bovime in the Karachi West District capsized mid-journey. 12 bodies have been deposited at the Karachi and Rara Hospital mortuaries, while 3 children have since been buried. In a statement, the Ghana Maritime Authority described the incident as a serious breach of safety standards and pledged full transparency and decisive action. An investigative team of maritime safety inspectors and Navy personnel has been dispatched to determine the cause and identify any safety violations. The authority will also form a high-level committee to guide enforcement measures and prevent future tragedies. As part of its response, it is launching a lakeside safety operation to ensure boats comply with passenger limits, life jackets use, and permit rules. The Ghana Maritime Authority extends extended condolences to the bereaved families, describing the loss as a national tragedy, and urged residents to avoid boarding overloaded boats. It reaffirmed its commitment to uncovering the causes and strengthening safety across all inland waterways. For WDR, Nadidi Tete, Accra.
You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Côte d'Ivoire Opposition Alliance defies government ban and insists on protesting against Ouattara's 4-term bid. Mali imposes a visa ban on Americans in a reciprocal move after a similar policy by the U.S. State Department on Malian travelers. Guinea's judiciary system launches an investigation into a deadly confrontation at a mining site. The Liberian police faces a public backlash over fatal shooting of a mentally ill person. Still ahead in the news, we have the guest interview, press review, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
In Nigeria, access to mental health care remains a major challenge, with millions lacking support despite rising cases of trauma and depression, particularly among displaced populations. To mark this year's World Mental Health Day, the Federal Medical Center, JABI, in Abuja, the nation's capital, partnered with Purple Hands Empowerment Initiative. The goal is to bring mental health services to residents of Kuchigoro Internally Displaced Persons Camp. Usman Umar in Abuja reports.
The two-day outreach held under the theme Access to Services, Mental Health in Catastrophe and Emergencies featured a mental health walk, trauma education, free screening and counseling sessions. The initiative targeted improved awareness and access to mental health services, especially for people affected by conflict and displacement. Health experts say 1 in 4 Nigerians may experience a form of mental illness in their lifetime. More than 80% of those affected have no access to proper care. The outreach by FMC JABI aims to bridge part of the gap through community-based sensitization and early intervention. Dr. Olubenga Abiodun is from the Abuja Federal Medical Center.
We are very, very passionate about community engagement, and we've, as part of our social responsibility to communities around us, we go to these communities using the agencies of our many departments and units to sensitize community members, to create awareness, and to provide them with free healthcare services.
At the Kuchibo IDP camp, residents received free mental health consultations, resilience training, and counseling. Founder of Purple Hands Empowerment Initiative, Dr. Brenda Max Ndwaguibe, said addressing stigma and raising awareness are vital for empowerment and social stability.
During our work in rural areas, we observe patterns, and one of the patterns that we have observed is that to empower a woman, she needs to be mentally whole, because health is not just about physical health. The mental components of health is a core part of health. So for a woman to be empowered, and of course for the nation to be empowered, we all need to be mentally sound.
Mental health advocates say activities like this must be sustained across Nigeria and the wider West African region to close the gap and integrate mental health into emergency and primary healthcare systems. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we'll stay a little bit longer in Nigeria as WADR's Usman Umar joins us with briefs of major and banner headlines from the national dailies.
Nigeria's headlines today cycle around, once again, tension in the education sector and mounting fiscal pressures, even as governance and fraud risks linger. From Punch comes confirmation that the Academic Staff Union of Universities, that is ASU, has commenced a 2-week warning strike effective midnight today, citing unaddressed demands such as back pay, university revitalization funds, and the full signing of the 2009 agreement with government. The federal government, on the other hand, has restated its preference for dialogue and warned that no work, no pay may apply. In another key Punch report, the Department of State Services has cautioned Nigerians that a dismissed officer is impersonating DSS, that is Department of State Services personnel, signaling continuing risks in public trust and security oversight. Now we move to Vanguard newspaper, where we see the ASU issue carried across their pages, noting that despite government overtures, the union insists on withdrawing services after its ultimatum expired. Alongside that, economic analysts warn that Nigeria is losing between 500 billion naira and 900 billion naira annually, roughly 300 to 560 million US dollars, depending on the rate, to trade inefficiencies tied to fragmented digital systems, overlapping agency functions, and weak interagency coordination. Now, in the leadership pages, the ASU strike also dominates, with emphasis on how the government reaffirms commitment to dialogue even as the warning strike begins. But a second major story stands out. Nigeria's public debt stock is under scrutiny, with analysts cautioning the government to refrain further borrowing. But in recent weeks, the debt stock has been placed in the range of about 150 trillion naira, which will translate into tens of billions of US dollars. And that's it on Press Review as I hand you back to the studios.
Many thanks, Usman Omar.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
The Guest segment is a focus on Cameroon, where vote counting is underway following Sunday's presidential election, in which some 8 million eligible voters went to the polls to elect a new president. From publications by the Electoral Commission, ELECAM, 12 candidates, including one female, were validated by the Constitutional Council for the presidential race. Incumbent 92-year-old Paul Biya is seeking an 8th term in office. With little opposition, Biya's main rival in the October 12 election was a former minister and government spokesperson, Issa Chiroma Bukari. Now across the country, polls opened by 8 a.m. and closed by 6 p.m. Joining us from Limbe in the southwest of Cameroon is journalist Solomon Agborem, who tells us about the voting process across the country on Sunday.
Thank you very much, Hassan. Though the turnout was quite low at the time of the opening of the polling stations at 8 a.m., 7 hours into the voting process, we still observe that the turnout was timid in some of the polling stations that we visited. But the rest of the remaining 4 hours were very determining in terms of the participation of electorates. It is important to note that we have a few hitches here and there towards the end of the close of the polling stations across the country. But back in my city, the turnout was satisfactory as per the elections governing body, better known here in the short form, ELECAM. So by and large, it's been an election with very high stakes, an election with enthusiasm, an election with high hopes. The race that started with 12 different opposition parties ended up to zoom into just 2. The incumbent President Paul Biya and presidential aspirant, former Minister of Communication and erstwhile Minister of Employment and Vocational Training, Issa Chiroma Bukari.
What are some of the concerns leading up to the elections? I mean, what are citizens yearning for?
They are yearning for better living conditions. They are yearning for clean environment. They are yearning for basic provision of basic amenities. They are yearning for good roads. They are yearning for good jobs. They are yearning for effective participation in the democratic process. And they decided that they are going to take their own destiny into their hands. Now, Hassan, it has been so different, like we have covered in past elections. In 2018, when we covered the last presidential elections, it wasn't like this. The turnout was massive. But this year, as per the opening of the polling station, it was timid but effective. Effective in what sense? People came out to do what they're supposed to do. So, like they will say in French, the tendance in Cameroon is something else right now. Permit me to also highlight that we had a video that surfaced on different social media platforms in Cameroon, where a vehicle belonging to the gendarmerie, one of the elements of the forces of law and order, was set ablaze in the town of Garoua, the native town of where presidential aspirant Issa Chiroma Bakari comes from, and that there was some kind of agitation that the ballot papers of candidate Issa Chiroma Bakari were not found at Nasarawa polling station. And so they got offended and had to go above the board to set ablaze a gendarmerie vehicle.
What worry Cameroonians the most as we speak, since Alicam has 15 days to declare the results?
The fear of Cameroonians right now as we speak is the fact that the Constitutional Council may not paint the true picture on the ground. But again, Cameroonians peace-loving, and they remain confident in what they already have as first-hand information from the various polling stations. We were leaving one of the polling stations and we overheard the conversations that we already have the results from the polling stations and we are ready to defend these results. So the fear should be more on the Constitutional Council to do justice with the Cameroonian people. I think that is where we are right now.
Solomon Agboram is a Cameroonian journalist. In the sporting world, Ghana enters celebratory mode following the Black Stars qualification for next year's FIFA World Cup. Striker Mohamed Kudus tucked away a close-range effort early in the second half to earn a 1-0 win over Comoros and send an overflowing Accra Stadium into celebration. The Black Stars are the fifth African nation to confirm participation at the finals, which will be held in the United States, Canada and Mexico. They have been to 4 previous tournaments, reaching the quarterfinals in 2010. In a related development, the Gambian government gives $20 million to GFF to fund Scorpions World Cup qualifiers. The government of the Gambia, through the Ministry of Youth and Sports, recently gave $20 million to the Gambia Football Federation to fund the country's senior national team 2026 FIFA World Cup qualification matches in the September and October windows. The budget support made into transfers goes towards supporting the cost of Scorpions air tickets, accommodation and allowances for the players. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Ismaila Kamara for the technical support. Do interact with us via social media platforms X, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, WADR English Service, and stream live on WADR.org. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is a rebroadcast of WADR's health flagship program, Well Body. Today's edition is a special focus on breast cancer awareness. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Niba County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria, and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.